Welcome to Unit 6, Session 2.
Risk management using failure mode and effect analysis, FMEA. An example to illustrate how the technique is used. A product development project is planned to introduce a new petrol engine grass mower. In that sentence is our first problem. There's an assumption here that what the customer wants is a grass mower. And what we generally mean by that is a device that has some cutting blades, let's say rotary, and that those blades are adjusted to a particular height and they're pushed over the lawn, over the grass, and they cut the grass uniformly across the surface. The problem is that we're making an assumption that what the customer wants is to cut grass. That's not actually the root of what the customer wants. What the customer actually wants is to have uniformly short grass so that it looks neat and tidy and attractive in the garden. Now, our known solution is therefore to cut the grass. Consider another example. Years ago we used to have record players. Our parents perhaps had them. If you would say to somebody at that time, what do you want to record music onto or to play music from, then they would instantly think of a record player. They had no idea that a compact disc might exist and would do that job much more successfully. Or in fact that we could record music onto a pen drive. The quality would be better, it's much smaller, we can store much more music or other materials. So we have to be careful that we understand what the real motivation of the customer is and take those motivations into account when we're thinking about what risks there might be in producing a new or innovative product. Now this example is fairly silly. The other thing that a customer doesn't want is to collect the grass, because he ends up with bags of grass that he doesn't really know what to do with. So the idea here is that we might collect the grass and then burn it as we continue to mow. That way, at the end of the process, we haven't got anything to dispose of. Yeah, not too good an idea, and obviously plenty of risks. So the following has been constructed, the following diagram, assuming that we're talking about this new grass burning lawnmower. First thing to recognize is that there's a table across the top, or there's headings across the top of this table. The first heading is potential risk. Where do we get those risks from? Well, they can only come from our evaluation of the product idea, and that evaluation improves with experience. If we know about grass cutting, then we're likely to be better armed to think about what the risks might be. If we know about manufacturing processes, if we know about design, all of those experiences will allow us to evaluate potential risks most effectively. The next heading is severity. We may have identified the risk, but how severe is it? And this is looked at in terms of impact on the business. You see, there may be risks that we could identify that may be severe technical risks or not severe, but their impact on the business may be nil, very low, or 10, very high. Let me give you an example. Nissan had problems with their braking system in some of their cars a year or two ago. and this resulted in an unsafe situation, and there were one or two fortunately minor accidents that occurred. The fault was with the operating pedal and was fairly minor from an engineering point of view, but the impact on the business was very high because Toyota had built a reputation on reliability, and this problem severely impacted that reputation. So it's impact on the business that we ought to consider. The next heading is level of risk, its likelihood. We might identify a severe risk, but if it is never going to occur and it's therefore zero, then it has no impact. You notice that both severity and level of risk have a scale, in this case 0 to 10. There's nothing magical about those scales. People can use 0 to 5, 0 to 20, 0 to 100, but it should go from 0, there is no severity or there is no risk of this occurring, and therefore it's always 0 to something. If we multiply the two numbers together, or we multiply severity with level of risk, we end up with a score ranking. Clearly, in this case, that'll go from 0 to 100. We've then got probable cause, so we need to identify the root cause. Not always easy to do, but we need to identify what the root cause of the problem is, or the risk is. And lastly, we need to identify what remedial action is going to be taken to reduce the impact of the risk, and who will be responsible for that remedial action. There's no use having ideas about how you might reduce the impact of the risk if nobody is following that up and made responsible for implementation. So in this example, we've got a risk identified. The burner box idea may not be accepted by the customer. Now, if it's not, then that's quite severe to the business. I've estimated an 8. The likelihood might be middling, 4. If we multiply the two together, we've got 32. So about a third of the way up the potential scale of 0 to 100. Now, I've called this risk 1, but it might be broken down into more than one cause. So 1.1 might be the outside of the box may be too hot for customer safety. Now, that could be one of the causes. Another one might be 1.2, grass burns too slowly. Therefore, the idea is not actually effective. What I would then do is say, okay, how are we going to do something about these risks? What steps should we take? We might say, well, the designer has an input, and there might be a couple of things that he could do to resolve 1.1, and one of those, 1.1.1, incorporate a safety guard. It's fairly obvious. So we could accept that the box is going to be hot. That seems very likely. But if we guard it effectively, then we may well take away the potential harm that could occur to the user. The other thing that we could do here is to use a conventional collection box as a fallback. That is, that we could design this new mower with two options. One is with the burner box and presumably the safety guard, and the other is to design the burner box, the mower with a conventional collection box, and we might do that in parallel, so that if the burning of grass is not effective, then by the time of launch we have a fallback situation that we could take advantage of. Grass burns too slowly, so we could also make sure that the salesperson doesn't advertise the capability until the design is proven. We would obviously not want to publicize the fact that we're working on this design until we've proven that it actually works. Then we might want to promote it ahead of launch. I haven't really addressed grass burns too slowly. We could also look at the design from that point of view. That's one of the reasons we've got this fallback method here, but we could also do things like looking at how we burn, how we ignite the grass. Should we add fuel into the burn box, which might be, I don't know, temperature or moisture sensitive and therefore variable? It's starting to get quite complex then. Let's look at a different type of risk. Number 2 here, paint burns off the box. So obviously the paints that we have been using for the existing lawnmower didn't have to experience high temperature. If we were to use the same paints for the new design, then it's pretty clear that the paint is going to burn off the burner box. Again, that would be quite severe. The customer is definitely not going to like that. The likelihood might be 100%, i.e. 10. It will definitely happen. Therefore, our score ranking might be as high as 80% if you like in this case. The cause is that the standard paint system is not temperature resistant, so it will occur. So manufacturing engineering, they could look at establish the required paint system and plant cost, gain spend approval before design finalized. There is a cost implication, as there are with the other steps, particularly for the designer. So we would have to look at what sort of paint would be required. Could we use it on our existing paint plant? What would it cost to introduce? Another potential risk, number 3, cost/benefit not valued by the customer. Again, quite severe. Didn't intend all these to be the same. However, again, the same. Likelihood, fairly high. We've got a sort of mid-range score ranking. And we've got a couple of reasons why that might occur. Customers' resistance to the concept. Yes, they don't understand it. They don't see its advantage. They think it may be unsafe. Collection of garden waste by local authority. There may be a process which is already in place which makes it fairly convenient to get rid of grass cuttings. Not in all areas, but maybe in some. What can we do about these? Marketing manager. Sales/promotion literature to educate the customer prior to launch. So this product is coming, it's going to be launched very shortly, it has wonderful advantages for you, it's perfectly safe, here's a video of it working, etc., etc. And we could also identify the labour benefits of having no bagging. That would be good as well. That should be 3.2, by the way. So yes, we could do that. So we could say yes, the local authority is going to take away your cut grass, but think of the problem of bagging it all up and lugging it to the front of the house, etc. There is still a significant advantage. You'll also notice here that we've got a numbering system, and we follow these numbers all the way through right up to responsibility and remedial action. That's necessary because if we had a real product with perhaps 100 or more potential risks, we would need to keep track of them. We'd need to file them, we'd need to identify who was responsible, so there might be separate files for all these different people, and we would need to set times for when we were going to take action and what the outcomes were. We'd have to log all of that remedial action processes, and having a numbering system which works effectively is a good idea. Most companies would want to do that, so that the right times throughout the product development process, we're aware of what steps should have been taken and whether they've been effective. I've left a couple of spaces here. You may want to play with one or two of your own ideas about other risks that you could identify given this potential new product idea. See you at session 3.